we get started with our period end closing process, it's important to understand how posting periods work within SAP Business One. As we go through each section, I will review a common support request we get throughout the year and how to resolve it. The following path can be used to find the posting periods window. First, we'll start the hamburger icon and select administration, system initialization, and then posting periods. SAP Business One is extremely date sensitive, and it controls the automatic journal entries based on 3 types of dates. Here in the posting periods window, you can see the valid range of each date type for each posting period. The same logic applies to the marketing documents, such as AR invoices. To showcase the marketing document dates, I'll open up an AR invoice. We'll start with the posting date. This is the most important date on a given document, and this is the date that will be on the journal entries related to the AR invoice. Once the document has been added, the posting date will be locked down regardless of the document resulting in a journal entry. The posting date field will populate based upon the system date in the bottom center of your screen. Here you can see that posting date is 9/13/2024. Next, we have our delivery date and due date. This is commonly used on AR and AP documents to reflect the date that the inventory or service will be shipped or received respectively. The due date can almost always be adjusted when the document is open, but will be locked once the document is closed. Last but not least, we have our document date. This date is commonly used to reflect the date the document is added to the system. This can be helpful if the posting date or the date the invoice was sent differentiates from the date the invoice was received from the vendor. In this case, it would be from the customer. The document date is especially helpful if the payment terms for the customer or vendor start on the date the document is received. SAP will not allow the document to be added if any of the dates fall outside the to and from limits that the posting period have defined. The posting period has a status other than unlocked, or the posting period has not yet been created. A posting period can have one of the following 5 statuses. To show what the posting period statuses are used for, let's look at the posting periods for this year. First, let's start with unlocked. This is going to be used for posting periods 2024-09 to 2024-12. Again, this is under the assumption that we're working on the same fiscal year as our calendar year. Right? So that would stand for September of this year to December of this year. In the unlock period, all users with respect to their authorizations can post all types of transactions and documents this period, and this status is assigned by default to new posting periods. This posting period status will allow the addition or update of any document type, including sales or purchasing. Again, as you can see, that's going to be for our last 4 months of the year. So this month, all the way down to December. Next, we have unlock except sales. And this is going to be used for last month. All users with respect to their authorization can post all types of transactions and documents this period, with the exception of sales documents that include sales orders, sales quotations, AR invoices, deliveries, and AR credit memos. You can assign this status once the period ends, but there's still purchasing documents such as late AP invoices and other transactions that should be posted this period. We most commonly see this the first few days after the period has ended. Next, we have our closing period. And this is going to be for 2024-01, or this January, to 2024-07. That would obviously be to July. Again, operating under that assumption that our fiscal year is the same as our calendar year. The closing period is for users with full period and closing authorization, and they can post all types of documents and transactions this period. You can assign the status to this period if one of the following 3 conditions apply. The period has ended, all late transactions have been posted, or only your year-end closing remains to be done. Right? So this is going to be for the accounting team that's going to be doing any reconciliation or anything like that in preparation for their year-end or period-end close. Last but not least, we have our locked. So I'll scroll up here so everyone can see 2023. Locked means that neither documents nor transactions can be posted at this period. This is the final step of the closing process, and it should be completed after the closing journal entries have been made. Now that we understand period statuses within SAP Business One, SAP has also included some helpful automations to aid in the period and closing process. First, at the bottom of our posting periods window, we have a checkbox that says create new periods with due date to in next financial year. This checkbox automatically sets the due date to of the new posting period to the last day of the selected month in the set to end of the next financial year. So in this case, basically what this means is that if I were to create my posting period 2025, what SAP is going to do is it's going to send that due date, the to the end of the following posting year, right? So in this case, what's going to happen is 2025 will then be sent to the very end of 2026. In this case, on December. Next, we have the automatically update period status to closing period for existing periods. Basically, what this means is that SAP is automatically assigns the closing period status to periods that have already ended. When you log into SAP Business One, the system date is compared with the posting date to defined for the existing posting periods. Each posting period with a posting date to that is earlier than the current system date gets the status closing period. An authorized user can also change the status of the existing posting periods. So again, basically what this does is it automatically changes the period status to closing period 2 days after the new period starts. So in this case, whenever the month of September is over, on the second day of October, the period of September will be set to a closing period. Do as preparatory work to our period and closing process is we need to make sure that all of our posting periods that we want to close for are set as closing periods. So what I'll do here is I'll go to my administration, system initialization, and then select my posting periods. For this demonstration, I'm going to close the year of 2015. So I'll simply go ahead and scroll down here to my year of 2015. So as we can see here, I'll select my row 109, 2015-01, which would be January in this case, is set to period status of closing period, all the way down to 2015-12, which is line number 120, set to closing periods. So that means we're ready to go and we're ready to close this year out. So if it's not set to a closing period, all we have to do is go through and select our golden arrow and then change our period status to closing period. So we'll make sure we click OK to save our work. And then now we can open up our period and closing window. So to get there, we use our path administration, utilities, and then period and closing. Now in the upper right-hand corner of our period and closing window, you can see that we've got a drop down for number 1 here. What this allows you to do is it allows you to see all of your P&L accounts based upon the account level. So in this case, I'm only seeing things on level 1. So this is going to be my drawers. Then let's say, for example, I wanted to see all the active accounts that might carry the balance. What I can do is I can just select level 4 here or level 5. It depends on your chart of accounts. But you can see all of the GL accounts that you'd like to close for this period. So to do this, we can also check the balance. So we can select our golden arrow. That's going to take us to our chart of accounts. And if we wanted to just select everything or maybe unselect everything and then select the accounts that we wanted to close, we could just simply select this X at the top of our table here in the headers, and that's going to select all of our windows. So here we can see that we've selected all of our items. If there is no balance for this, SAP is going to hide the accounts with a 0 balance just so you don't have a whole lot of clutter in the next screen. So it's important that these are selected on the accounts that you'd like to close. Next, as we've talked about in the past, SAP Business One is extremely date sensitive. So this is where all that prep work that we did earlier talking about the posting periods comes into play. Okay. So what we can do here is we can select our year of 2015 because that's what we're going to be closing for. And you'll notice that I guess some of the years here aren't shown, let's say from 2006 and before. That's because the items or the posting periods are not created yet, or they're set to locked. So if you do find something in here, and let's say, for example, that year is missing, or maybe there's a specific period that's missing, it's probably because that date or that posting period has been set to locked, right? So that's why we make sure everything's set to closing period before we get into our period and closing window. From this, we've also have a start date and an end date in our from and to fields. Again, we're going to be closing out the entirety of our year of 2015. Therefore, we want to start on our 2015-01 period to our 2015-12 period, which is the last period of the year. You can certainly do this month by month if you wanted to. So let's say, for example, you wanted to close for 2015 in the month of January. You can select our 2015-01 here and as your start and end. So I'm going to move that back to my December of 2015. The next and most crucial portion of this window, maybe next to our dates, is the GL account determination. So basically what this allows you to do is it allows you to determine what the automatic journal entry is going to affect on the 2 entries that SAP is going to make per account in our PL. So what we can do here is we'll select our retained earnings account. That's already there. This is where the balance of the P&L accounts is ultimately going to end up on the first day of the period after the period that you're closing for. Then we have our period end closing account. And this period end closing account, I'm going to type in 332 because I know my account number off the top of my head. But this period end closing account is going to be your bridge account or your clearing account. Basically, the way that this works is on the last day of the month, which we'll talk about here in a second, or of the period, it's going to take the balance of the P&L account that you're closing for and then move it to this period and closing account to then ultimately be cleared to our retained earnings account. So again, whether you call that a clearing account or a bridge account is up to you. It's very similar to how WIP and the allocation accounts work on the production and purchasing side, respectively. So now that I've got my P&L account selected, we've got everything selected here. We've got my period and my start and end date, or from and to date. And then I have my retained earnings mapped out correctly and my period and closing account mapped out correctly. I'm good to go. So what this is going to do is it's going to give me a report of all the outstanding balances for my P&L accounts that we just selected. So we'll start in the upper left-hand corner. We've got Ref 1 and Ref 2 fields. These are going to be included with your journal entry as references. We have up to 11 characters in both one of these fields. As you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, we have our 11 characters for our system information. And then we have our due date and our document date. So again, as we've been talking about during this entire session, the due date and the document date are really important, much like our marketing documents. So in this case, what we want to do is we want to set this as our last day of our to period or our end period. So in this case, it's going to be 12, 31, and then 15, right? So December 31st, 2015. Again, this is going off of that calendar and fiscal year being the same. And then we'll also do the same thing for the document date. So we'll do 12/31/15. So why these dates are so important is, again, because what's going to happen is the P&L balance is going to be taken to your period and closing account at the end of the month, in this case on 12/31. And then on January 1st of 2016, it's going to clear that period and closing account out and put it into our retained earnings. Last but not least, we have our remarks. These remarks come system populated. It's best to leave those the way that they are. In the same case, we also want to make sure that we're adding additional remarks. For example, closing period 2015. And so this is going to be referenced on all the corresponding journal entries on this document. Next, we'll go through and we'll select each one of the accounts that we want to clear out to our retained earnings. Now, this is where the legwork really comes into play on the period and closing. So to verify that this information is correct, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run my P&L to look at my profit period to make sure that the accounts or the two balances that we have are the same. So what I can do is I can go to my financials, I'll go to my financial reports. I'll expand this over here. Financials again, and then I'll select my profit and loss statement. From here, again, continuing with that sentiment that dates are extremely important, we'll do 01/01/15 for January 1st, 2015. And then we'll also do 12/31/15 as well. Again, this is our start and end date for our profit and loss. So I'll go ahead and run this account or run this P&L. And what we're going to see down here in our profit period is that our 17,231.6 matches on our period and closing recommendation here. So immediately what's going to jump to your attention is that we've got a positive value here in our profit and loss and our negative balance here in our balance for our period and closing. So where this is coming from is we have a setting in this database. It might not be the same in your database. So if this setting is unchecked, it'll both be the same value. This can be found in the company details. This is also an irreversible setting. So as you can see, if you come to the basic initialization tab here of the company details, this display credit balance with the negative sign is checked, meaning that the credit balances are going to show with that negative value. So as long as our dollar amounts match here and here, we're good to go, and we can go ahead with our period and closing process. So let's close out our profit and loss here, and let's come back to our period and closing. Now that we've validated that everything is correct, we're going to make sure that we make our delineation on the account codes that we want to close out. So what's going to happen here is that 6 journal entries are going to be added, or I guess 3 journal entries are going to be added, each one for each of the accounts on this date here. And then on the next date, that January 1st of 2016, those accounts are going to be cleared out again. Again, debits and credits depend on the natural side, whether it's a revenue or expense. But those accounts are going to be cleared out, again, that clearing account, to our retained earnings account on the next day. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and click execute. It would help if I use my selection here, and then the documents are going to be posted. So now what I can do is I can close out of all my period and closing details, and I can open up my journal entry. So from here, I'm going to use my toggle arrow to go back. And as you can see, this is exactly what we expected, right? So here's our first entry. So we cleared out our sales tax expenses, right, into our period and closing account. And then on the next day, and this is on 12/31, then on the next day, it was cleared out again into our 01/01/2016 from our period and closing account to our retained earnings. One other thing that you'll notice about this journal entry that's a little bit different than all the other journal entries in the system is if we look at our origin here. This origin says BC, meaning balance closing. And what this means is that it was a part of the period and closing process that was not based on any transactions. So what SAP does to denote this is this BC origin. The final 2 steps of the period and closing process are validating our work through the profit and loss statement, and then making sure that our period statuses have changed from closing period to locked. So first, we'll start out by going through our financial analysis. So we'll open up our hamburger icon here, go to financials, financial reports, financial, and then profit and loss. And our from and to date, we're going to make this the first day of the next period that we've closed for. So in this case, it's going to be 01/01/2016 for January 1st, 2016. And we'll make the 2, because we're in a demo database and we have other transactions past 2016. I'll make this 01/01/2016. We're going to go ahead and run the profit and loss statement. And the first thing that you'll notice is that everything is left as blank. So that means that we cleared everything out and everything's now in our retained earnings that was in our profit and loss statement for the year of 2015. Our next step is to close this out, and we'll make sure that we change our period status for all of our posting periods to locked from closing period. So again, I'll come back up to my administration, system initialization, and then posting periods. Here I'll scroll all the way down to our year of 2015. And for our first line on, we'll go through, we'll select our golden arrow for our posting period 2015-01. And I'm going to change my period status from closing period to locked. The most important thing here is that you select your update button to save your work, and know that this won't update until you reopen your posting periods. And I'll do that now. So I'll go back up. I'll select my posting periods. And I'll scroll down to 2015. And as you can see, my posting period has been set to locked for the status. I'll rinse and repeat this process until I'm done, all the way down to line number 120, to denote that these periods have been closed and no further entry should be made into these posting periods. If you want to make this much quicker, you can use the Control left arrow key to go back, or you can use your toggle arrows to go back to the previous period so that you can make this process a little bit quicker rather than selecting each one of the golden arrows. Now, whenever I open my posting periods window back up, you'll see that all of my posting periods for the financial year of 2015 have been locked. So here we have row 109, 2015-01, January in this case, all the way down to line number 120, 2015-12.